Right, so here we are, Poetricity live presenting as we're going through the poetry for the next book project, which is Space for Your Brilliance to Flow. The premise being really that using the framework of space, which is seeing your true essence, being present to where the confusion tends to come from, ascending our thinking, connecting to the present moment, we can then experience all that's available to us in that present moment. So we're kind of just going through a few pieces. I've got some here that I want to put on the table, and we'll just see where we go with it. We may touch on some of those things we discussed before we started recording, actually. We'll see how these things tend to work themselves out. So this one is called Squeeze. Squeezed. What an opportunity for deep discovery. Blockages hidden inside, now kicking and screaming. Feeling the heat put on by the squeeze. Prompted by inconvenient reality, powered by curious intent, that the learning may begin. Not time to shrink, expand into it, grow to be the one who knows, having been there, empowered to tell others that they can get through this squeeze and be much better for it. I read it again. Squeezed. What an opportunity for deep discovery. Blockages hid inside, now kicking and screaming. Feeling the heat put on by the squeeze, prompted by inconvenient reality, powered by curious intent, that the learning may begin. Not time to shrink, expand into it, grow to be the one who knows, having been there, empowered to tell others, you can get through this squeeze and be much better for it. What do you hear in this?
But what I'm hearing is unforeseen forces screaming to come out.
It's a
uh,
good one. Tell me
I,
more about that.
I don't know. Unscreen forces screaming to come out. Um, this is not something that I am in control of.
Okay.
So it's like it's not something that I can control. I can
Okay.
consciously control.
Okay.
It's something that's been released
Right. Okay.
and it has to come out, and it's doing everything to come out, no matter what I want to do, no matter how much I want to hide it
Right.
or control it. It's
Right.
not something I can. That's what's coming out for me for this.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's like
Anything else?
that sentence when you say feeling the heat put on by the squeeze,
Yeah.
prompted by inconvenient reality. So it's not something that I can control when, where, or how. It's
Mm,
there,
mm.
powered by curious intent. Hmm. It might be a curious intent that I might not, because you can be unaware of a curious intent, can't you?
Yeah. It's an interesting one because it's kind of, I hear what you're saying that there are things that you know are there. And it's kind of you now have an environment in which it's being prompted to come out, which is the whole idea of the squeeze is whatever is situation or circumstances you're in that causes you to experience a kind of discomfort, if you like, or that something is at play. It focuses you to pay attention to what's happening. Um, And like you say, maybe become aware that there are things in there that need to come out. Anything else?
I suppose it's the elements of not being afraid of
Mm,
what's not being afraid of what's coming up, but to embrace it.
mm, I love that. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the pointing of the curious intent. Like, what is this about? This is like things that you wouldn't necessarily look at or were aware that they're there, but then they begin to express. And the sense that because you feel the squeeze, if you like, the squeeze is kind of epitomizing this whole context where it feels like things are not convenient, things are not comfortable. There is a discomfort of sorts, which is causing things to come out that otherwise might not have been, you might not have been aware of. But I love what you're saying about embracing it. And I suppose the last line really is pointing to it wouldn't feel like that at the time, but actually if you let it play out and then embrace it and learn from it, which is the curious intent,
Yeah.
the hope is, the expectation is that you'd be much better for
So
it.
for it. Yeah.
But it rarely ever feels so at the time. And then that's why this reminder is there.
Yeah.
So I remember when I was going through my, many years ago when I was going through my financial burnout situation, I remember a friend of mine, Steve, saying to me, Frank, it might seem strange that I'm saying this to you, but you're going to be better for this. You're going to be the better for this. And at the time, I knew he meant well, so I wasn't going to kind of reject it outright. But you had that sense of, I don't know, I'm not sure about that. But ultimately, the work I'm now doing now came from what I learned from that financial squeeze, if you like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I had to own my part in what did I do to make this happen? What is driving my actions that caused me to make the decisions that led to this outcome? Things like that. Anything
I,
else?
su- yeah, I suppose in a sense that you're saying that I suppose it's for me, it's like becoming sick, right, with something major. It's almost like not that I wanted it to happen or relish in it,
Mm,
but it has made me look think differently. It has
mm,
made a difference to my mindset, what I think about, what I think is important,
mm,
what I've neglected, what I've not neglected. It made me think about where I could go and where I can't, where I've put limitations on myself. It's opened up a new life,
mm,
and and giving me time and space
mm.
to be with myself.
That's amazing.
and
I love.
even when I went through that phase of remember that phase where I was never in my house, I was
Mm,
always going out. I went through that phase. I've gone through that now, and that so I spend more time at home. And I think maybe the going out was another was a could have been another way of me not wanting to spend time with myself. Although
mm,
I've always liked being, I don't have a problem with being at home by myself or doing things by myself. I've always been that kind of person. But I think when it is, I think it just felt different. So maybe the going out was, yes, I wanted to socialize. I missed the work environment and all the rest of it. But part of it was also that I don't have to deal with myself.
mm. Yeah. And what you're saying there reminded me of that piece we said about know thyself. I think we did that at much earlier on when we were looking at
Yeah,
identity and things like that. Is like we'd
yeah,
rather scale the seven seas than go
yeah,
deep within. So it's that idea of actually, and I think sometimes we're afraid of what we might find subconsciously. We're not even consciously afraid of it. We're subconsciously afraid of what we might find. But ultimately, I love what you said about actually taking that journey has allowed you to reevaluate life as a whole. And you're now opened up to greater possibilities that you wouldn't have considered before. I mean, just again, before we started recording, we were talking about, starting a garden and doing things that you kind of didn't see yourself doing in the past, but all of a sudden you had the inspiration to do it and you started to do it, and you're enjoying it. So I think the point of the piece really is to help reframe the idea that if something feels uncomfortable, it must be bad, therefore you have to run away from it. But actually, sometimes our greatest learning come from those kind of situations.
Yeah.
And the other thing I was going to say, actually, before moving on, is actually when you think about if something has helped you reevaluate how you see life as a whole, that benefit is going to be there for all of your life.
Yeah.
Because you've transformed, you've changed. So there's no limit to what that can open up for you if something reframes life for you as a whole, which I think is very powerful. Anything else on that before we try something else?
No, I think that's it really.
Okay, so let's go with this one, which is kind of along similar lines and probably
It's
would build.
sorry, something's just I was just looking at that sentence, empowered to tell others you can
Yes.
get through this squeeze.
Yeah.
And that I don't know, that sentence reminded me because I'm looking at going to do some volunteer work.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things is what I want to do. I want to work with people who have been through a stroke and to help them to realize that there is a life after a stroke.
Wow.
And you got to empower. You can I want to empower them to embrace that life and
Mm.
not keep grieving for what was in the past.
Wow.
Live for the now.
That's powerful.
So I've been speaking with Barnet Volunteers
Mm.
Bureau, and they're very interested in what I want to do. So they
Wow.
are going to make some connections on my behalf to see if they can get me into working alongside some stroke survivors.
Wow.
So that's something.
That's powerful. Yeah, and again, that's that whole thing that having been through it, you can support with full integrity anybody else who might be going through something similar. Because then going back to the story I was sharing earlier, the reason that friend of mine was able to tell me what he told me was the next thing he said after that was give his own example of how he went through something difficult and how he was reaping the benefits from what he learned from that. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's really, really powerful. And wouldn't that be beautiful if what appeared to be the worst thing at one point ended up being something that not only transformed your experience of life, but also now so many more people are going to be able to experience life differently because of what you've experienced. I
Yeah.
think that's beautiful. Okay, this one is called Stay, and it's a build on what we've just talked about. I'll read it. Change this, move that. Make me feel good now. Leave me alone. Okay as I am, as long as everything stays as the ego wants it. At least for now, that is. All this happening to show you that what you have been avoiding, none of it can break you. If only you would stay long enough and let experience show you. I'll read it again. Change this, move that. Make me feel good now. Leave me alone. Okay as I am, as long as everything stays as the ego wants it. At least for now, that is. All this happening to show you that what you have been avoiding, none of it can break you. If only you would stay long enough and let experience show you.
That's funny. When I look at this one, the first thing I thought of, um, not wanting to change
Mm.
or feeling that change is a bad thing,
Mm.
and that, and sort of like, um, being afraid of the unknown and
Mm-hmm.
uncertainty, and always wanting to stay in like a comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
But then the poem took a turn afterwards, and I thought, oh no, maybe it's not talking about that, because it went on to say that sometimes we might be in situations and it seems it's a horrible situation, might not be a nice situation, but instead of avoiding it,
Mm.
it's sometimes it's best to just sit in it and go through it, because it
Mm.
might not be as bad as we think, and we probably cope with it better than we think we could cope with it,
Wow.
and learn a lot more from it than trying to run away from it.
Mm. That's beautiful.
So I don't know how the two bits of it sits together. That's the two. The ending, the beginning seems like resistant to change, whereas as it went into the fact that you might be somewhere that you just need to just sit there and ride it out, and you can manage, you can cope with it.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. I love those points that you raised there, that whole idea of you're going to learn more by staying and seeing what's there than running away from it. I think first we have to embrace ourselves with compassion to say it is natural to be afraid of the unknown, like you say, and to resist change because we don't know what's going to, wherever you are now, you know what it is. So that's known. If something is going to be different than it unknown, then opens the possibility it could be, might not be good. The question is if the universe is for you and is there to serve you and to bring about what's best for you, actually, if you trust that, then you can afford to stay with that unknown, because then as you stay there, you will come to know what it is you need to know about it. And here's the other thing, actually, like you were saying, if you're trying to run from it, you can't actually outrun what is there for you, because it's the next thing for you to learn. It's the next thing for you to grow into. It's the next thing for you to develop. So you then create these cycles. I certainly have experienced that. It's kind of like, okay, maybe my anxiety might be to go and sell to people and say, you need this service, you need this, that, and the other. Then I can do lots of training programs. I can see lots of coaches. I can do lots of things with the belief that if I can just do that, it will overcome that thing that I don't want to sit and lean into because it feels uncomfortable. So the point is, it doesn't matter how much you do it. The universe loves you too much to allow you to skip that class, because that's the next thing in your evolution. So actually, when you stay and just breathe into whatever it is, breathe into the discomfort and stay, then you come to learn what is there for you to learn about it so that you can then move on. Anything else on?
Yes, I like the when you said breathe into the discomfort, because I think that, and especially when you think about it, I've been a person that I don't like uncertainty. I don't like unknown business. I'm not one of those. Some people, they're just a risk taker. They're just I've never really been that kind in that sense. So I don't like not knowing. I don't like. I suppose it's about being out of control and not being in control and not being in control. And I don't like that. So sometimes I don't like the discomfort of not knowing. I don't like the discomfort of not knowing what's around the corner, or not knowing what potentially what's going to happen if I do this, or if I make that decision and that. But since my new experience now, I embrace, because I was writing it down today, I embrace my I see now I see my uncertainty as an opportunity now.
I love that.
I see it as an opportunity to find out, to delve into myself and find out more about myself.
Wow.
So I'm not scared of the unknown. I'm not scared to feel discomfort. I actually trust God more now than I did before I had my stroke.
Wow.
That's one thing. The trust has just gone out. I just trust him more to know that, because I know that I can trust him more because of what I've been through, but all the things that he's shown me on the way. And I just know that I don't have to feel comfortable in everything. As long as I trust God, I don't have to feel comfortable.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I suppose yeah, I love what you shared there about you learning to trust, and then for you then, because ultimately even that idea of control is an illusion, right? We've never been in control of everything. There are certain things we believe we control, but if you look at everything that happens in your life, how much of it could you have completely predicted and controlled is the truth of the matter. So actually being able to let go and stop trying to do something that you were never successfully doing anyway creates that space for you. And I love that idea of, and how does that feel to be able to trust as opposed to having to always be seeking to control?
It's quite liberating, actually.
Mm,
It's very free. I just feel freer. I
mm.
just feel more. I feel more free. I feel more. It's like it's like a cool breeze blowing on
Oh, that's
top of me.
beautiful. That's
It's like a
beautiful.
cool breeze blowing, and I don't know where I'm going to be blowing. I don't know where I'm going to be going next, but you know what? It's all right.
Yeah,
It's all
yeah,
right. It's all
that's
right.
beautiful. And that is the thing that when you step into that place, just give me a second. We got Muriel joining us. When we step into that place, it's like you say, it's very freeing. And that freedom is there for you to enjoy for the rest of your experience in life. You understand? And that then all the energy you spend trying to do something that you were never really doing is just a story that you were. Did you see what I'm saying? There's another point I wanted to pull out actually. Hey Muriel, um, this bit here, stay as the ego stays, as long as everything stays as the ego wants it, at least for now that is. And I'm just drawing attention to that because that's something I think is worth us just paying
Yes.
attention to. That actually the part of us that doesn't want to experience that discomfort makes up stories and changes them continually. So, you know, 1 minute it wants this, then the next minute it's going to be that, and the next minute it's going to be that. So it's the idea that you don't take it literally and take it too seriously, but being able to just be aware of what's going on. And I love the idea of embracing the unknown as opportunity. I think that's just beautiful.
Yes,
Um,
definitely.
anything else on that one?
Um, so I suppose staying long enough and let the experience show you. I suppose it's about resilience and endurance.
Mm, mm, mm,
And sometimes we're more resilient than we think, and we don't know how resilient we are until we go through things. But if we try to avoid going through things, how
mm.
do we know whether we're going to go, whether we come out? And we don't know how we're going to come out at the end if we don't go through it. So it's about taking that step, yes, but also having the confidence in yourself that you're strong enough or to
Mm.
to weather the storm, so to speak.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That kind of is what that second verse is pointing to. That actually there is something here that none of it can really break you. It looks like it can, but if you stay long enough, you recognize it. It's not going to break you. But actually, what it has done is either shown you something, or if all you learn from that is actually no, I can make it through this. It might not feel that way. And I think this is something that's come up in both our pieces. It's that intelligence of knowing that because something feels like you can't, doesn't mean you can't. But I use that phrase, breathe through that discomfort, breathe through that sense of, okay, how many stories am I telling myself about this that's making this actually worse? Do you see what I'm trying to say? And that kind of might lead to our next piece actually. But hi, Muriel, how are you?
Um, I'm okay, Frank. I've tried so long to get in this morning. I've had so many calls. I'm having another one coming through. If I mute myself, I am interested, and it sounds I've got to be resilient. And what you're saying is so true. I'm getting through this morning, but it's been one of those mornings. But
Oh, hi,
anyway, thank
Muriel.
you. I'm
Hi.
I'm I'm trying to, you know, concentrate with you, and thank you so much. I just want to know that I appreciate you, Frank, and it's not because I don't want to be on it. It just interferes a lot
It,
of things. So
everything is fine. We're glad that you're able to be here, and
thank
whatever you
you.
can get from it and give to the space is all good. Yeah.
I always get from
Yeah,
it. Thank you.
yeah.
Right. Okay. So I'm actually, based on kind of the last piece that I put in there, I'm going to go for this one because I think this speaks to that last point. And when I read it, we can then explore it a bit more. So this one is called The Sun.
The sun.
Yes, the sun.
Okay, yeah.
Many a cloud across the skies don't mean the sun just died. For when they pass, we see what has always been, the sun that always shines. Many a thought occupy the mind, don't mean your brilliance is gone. For when they pass, we experience what has always been, your innate brilliance shining through. I read that again. The sun. Many a cloud across the skies don't mean the sun just died. For when they pass, we see what has always been, the sun that always shines. Many a thought occupy the mind, don't mean your brilliance is gone. For when they pass, we experience what has always been, your innate brilliance shining through.
Wow.
What does that speak to?
I guess it speaks to me. Sorry, Claudette.
Sorry. No, sorry, go on, Mira.
I guess it speaks to me that behind every cloud, the sun's shining.
Yeah, I love that.
I thought about the layers of life can disguise reality for us. And to me, this is about peeling back the layers and exposing what's all that's exposing that has always been there. So the cloud is like the layers of life.
I love that. I love that.
The disguise. You know, I mean, it could even be the identities. You know, and when you peel it all back, you can see what has always been there.
I love that. That kind of takes it. That almost takes us back to our original place where we started this journey, talking about identity. And is your identity your mind? Is your identity your body? And we're talking about a deeper essence, which in the Christian tradition we would call spirit, which is the essence of who you are, which is beyond all that. And that if you always anchor back into that aspect of yourself, then it's easier to see that actually you are okay, even though it doesn't feel that way, doesn't seem that way, because of the way the different layers of circumstances and relationships and different things are happening. And you begin to feel like all that ever is clouds. You know, you feel under the cloud, so to say. And it's kind of knowing that there's always availability to step back into that and experience the purity, so the essence of all our being is love in its innermost sense, is my belief. And I think that's the place that we can anchor from to look at that. Anything else on that?
And I suppose I think this speaks fluidity to me. That when it says for when they pass, it's like nothing it's not stagnant. There's some fluidity that's always moving. And if we don't, we can be standing still. And things are passing. And we can either go along with it or we can stand still.
I like that. I like that. And if we think about the previous piece, which talked about stay, actually that staying may be just staying for the cloud to pass so that you can then see once again that the sun is there. And in actual fact, the very hope that we have that we can find joy in any situation is the fact that that joy has always been there. we just can't see it, we can't touch it, we can't reach it, because circumstances, relationships, and different things have come and obscured it. Another thing I was going to call out in this one was that the importance of having relationships in your life that can help center you back in the sun and in the joy and in those things. That sometimes it's hard for us as individuals to see it ourselves because we're caught in it. We're in the thick of it. So to have people that can support you and call out and remind you and point you back to, I know it feels horrible right now, I know it feels this right now, but don't forget the sun is still shining. And when this cloud shall pass, you will experience the shining of the sun, the joy, the peace, anything else.
It reminds me of, I don't know why it comes to mind, of a basement and a balcony. We could be down in the basement doing all that we have to do and, you know, like clouded over and all of that. But when you get up on the balcony, you can see clearly. And,
I love that. I love that. And that actually is the metaphor for the A part of the framework, which is ascend. That is the idea of ascending, that you move to a place of perspective where you can see that the sun is still there and it's still shining, where you move to the place of perspective where you recognize that your true essence is not your mind, and maybe the drama is being created by your mind, but in your truest essence, you are still okay. You're still love. You're still all those things that we will call fruit of the spirit, if you like. Yeah, I love that. So that is the invitation really at that part of the framework is, okay, you can see where the confusion is coming from. You can see what your true identity is. Now, if we choose to ascend all of that, look above it into the essence of who we are, then we're ready to connect to the present moment, which is the breathing into what else is true for me now that can support me, rather than the thoughts systems or the way I'm looking at things that's dragging me down, or the way I'm looking at things that's making me feel bad about it. That sort of thing. Anything else on that?
Sorry, that's my little dog.
That's all right. What's the dog called?
Billy Blue, after Granddad.
Billy.
The children called him after Granddad, yeah. After Bill.
What a tribute.
Billy Blue.
Right. Okay.
I like the sentence when it says, many a thought occupy the mind.
Yeah.
Don't mean your brilliance has gone.
Right.
And I think that gives hope.
Yeah. Yeah.
That gives hope.
It does. It does.
That's such a hopeful sentence. That's such a hopeful bit of the poem.
Yeah.
And just along the way.
Yeah. And you just reminded me of something, really, in that I think what is helpful for us is, and this is why this framework and this idea of looking at the sun, the cloud is helpful, is that when you come to record, it's just like you have times where things are busy, feel stressed, overwhelmed, and then all of a sudden, when your thinking is not dwelling on those things, you drop into a place of peace until it then starts again, right? So that place of peace you dropped into didn't just arrive from somewhere. It's always been there. It's just covered over by all the things that we're focusing on and thinking about and ruminating about. So I think it's important for us to know that peace never leaves. The sun never leaves. If we're not experiencing it, what is it what are the clouds? So we begin to strip away and drop out of the clouds through our, okay, what is true and what can I connect to? So we don't see then that I have to go somewhere to get joy. I have to go somewhere to get the sun to shine again. I have to put this effort in to make the sun shine, because the sun is always shining. If I'm not experiencing the shining of the sun, my question to myself is, what clouds am I embracing? What clouds am I creating? What clouds are there for me? And I'm no point really saying that things aren't happening that are unpleasant, uncomfortable. That's not what I'm saying. But it's giving us that quicker route to get to a place where we can anchor into what will encourage and build us up, so that we can actually have the resilience to go through those things. Anything else? Right. So I'm going to step back a bit here and really go into some of the things that create some of that drama and what the mind is doing that may be creating some of this drama. So this one is called fancy prediction, and it's just really one of the mechanisms of the mind that could be helpful to us to see through. Equating predictability as safety, presuming to predict the future based on unreliable past data, up against the universe intent on displaying its full splendor, full of all possibility, never rendering any two moments the same. Ego persists in its illusion. It can predict its next move. I read that again. This is called fancy prediction. Equating predictability as safety, presuming to predict the future based on unreliable past data, up against the universe intent on displaying its full splendor, full of all possibility, never rendering any two moments the same. Ego persists in its illusion. It can predict its next move.
Well, I think on my past data, I wouldn't be able to build much of a future.
Me too.
Say a bit more about that, Mira.
I don't know why I said that statement, but I guess from a spiritual point of view, I'd rather that God was doing a new thing in my life, which He's promised to do.
Right.
Because all the past, it's been a building block. It's been a solid ground. A saying comes to mind: "Your anchor will hold even though the sails are torn." The sails could be torn, but we need to move on, don't we? So what we predict from the past, we would hope for a better future.
I like that. I like that. Better future.
Because we can't dwell on the past, can we?
Yeah.
We can build on it. We can build on the good things, but you know, yeah, that's my thoughts. And
thanks for sharing that. And there is a sense where there's two elements in at play there. The idea of appreciating that the past, it has the past, and then the expectation of a different future. That sort of idea. Yeah.
Yeah, because the anchor did hold, even though the sails have been torn. But you know, we're still moving on.
And I suppose if we follow your metaphor through, then I suppose how do we repair the sails so that the wind can grab the sails and move it on? It is kind of, if we were to go on that the sails can be repaired so that it can make the most of the wind that's there to blow it along and to move it on.
Thank God.
Yeah. Anything coming up for you, Claudia?
I think the first sentence, equating predictability as safety. And I think that to some extent, that's also tied up with the unknown. If we know what we're going to do, if we're certain about this, if we're in control of this, then we're safe.
Yeah. Yeah. and that's what the mind is selling. That's if you remember where we started talking before we started recording, we're talking about this idea of control and that, and you kind of taking that journey where you're now beginning to embrace the unknown as opportunity. So it's just helping us see that the brain is not a fault here. It's just how it's wired. Its job is to keep you safe. So it says, if I can try and predict the future, I can work out what's the potential danger and tell you to avoid it. That's its logic, basically. And so it sells you that illusion of control. That if I can control what's going to happen, then that's going to mean I'm going to be safe. That's going to guarantee my safety. And therefore, that's what I'm going to do. And if I can avoid anything that's unpredictable, then that's going to make sure, or at least help me not go experience danger. But of course, that's a one-sided story, right?
Yeah.
And there's another piece I wrote, which I may or may not present, which actually speaks very clearly about this whole discussion with fear and what that is. But let's finish with this one. Anything else coming up?
And in the bit when it says based on unreliable past data, it's almost like sometimes we can drag things from the past that we want to use to make us feel comfortable about our future. When sometimes that's just not what we should do. Because it cannot be, whatever happens in the past has happened with a context to it.
I love that.
And you might bring something and you want to use it into your present and in your future, but you can't be bringing the context is going to be different.
Yeah. You are making some very good observations there. Again, it's this idea that it's very simple what the mind is trying to do. It's trying to say, well, all I have to work with is the past because I don't know the future. So I'm going to take the past and I'm going to try and use it to predict the future so that I can help you make decisions that will keep you safe. That's kind of effectively what that is. But you've just pointed out one of the flaws of that particular methodology. It's all it has to work with because it can't predict the future accurately because it doesn't have control over it. The context is a very important piece there. The context is always evolving. Number one, is it always desirable that should be? And also, if it's predicting and making decisions based on a future and a premise that the past is going to be equal to the future, which is the unreliability of it. The past does not equal the future, but that's all the mind has to work with. So it's going to try its best to advise you on what to avoid and what to approach based on unreliable data and based on a premise that is not right, the promise that the past would equal the future, which is not. You never step in the same river twice, like they say. That kind of is pretty much. Anything else? So what would be good for us then, if we recognize that, say we are part of the clouds we're dealing with, is this extrapolation of the past into the future, that I am afraid that what has happened in the past is going to happen in the future. How can we support ourselves then to experience that differently, or at least to diffuse the discomfort from that, because we are aware by our thinking and understanding that it's just our mind trying to protect us, but we in our intrinsic self, our deepest self, the sun is still there for us. Then how do we kind of drop out of that?
Trust God. Trust that God knows what he's doing if we don't.
Yeah.
I guess for me, when I look back, as we have been thinking of doing that, but not bringing things into the future, my health has changed a lot. So I don't want to take it with me, but it's come. Different situations as you get older. It makes a difference how you see the sun shining and how you spend time in the sun. We'd all love a bit more sunshine, but thank God he knows. So, we just, as you say, Claudette, we just trust him. So he knows the future.
Yeah.
And he's kept us so far, so he's not going to let us go, is he?
I think there's an element of living in the moment of what is right now, embracing the reality, because that's what I hear a lot in what you're saying there, Muriel. That there's a reality now. So what story do we tell about that, and what do we say about that? How should we feel about that? If we're resisting it or if we're embracing it? So
Well, you have to embrace. I think you have to embrace it, because if you resist it, you're just doing yourself more harm.
Right. And that kind of is what we're pointing to here, that there's a way to relate to what's going on that could be helpful or not helpful. And that's the invitation that I always call it the ground zero of reality, is really saying this is, but what does it mean? And then it's what the stories about what it means, because we talked earlier on about the energy of this should be this way. And therefore you spend those times not embracing, like Claudette was sharing how she's hoping to go and support people who have experienced stroke to embrace life that is, and stop comparing it to what was, and be open to what the new possibilities are. And that away is kind of like stripping the clouds away to see the sun of the opportunities that exist with what is now, and being thankful for what you can be thankful for, about what's right, about what's happening right now.
I don't know why something comes to mind. I don't know if I can repeat the story, but there was an elderly lady, and she was registered blind, and they were taking her into this new care home, and they were describing the room to her, and they said, oh, you know, this is how this is. And she said, my dear, she said, I'm just so thankful to be here. So she couldn't even say it, but she was thankful to be in a safe place.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wonderful. I actually remember reading something someone was saying about Tina Turner, who recently died and whatever. She was saying actually that in the time of, I mean, she died ultimately from poor health at the end, but ultimately in those days where she was away from the public light and was just learning to be with herself and learning to enjoy every moment as it came, which is the invitation for this whole framework. It's about how do you connect to the present moment, experience that present moment in the best possible way. That is really what all this whole framework is about. And she was reflecting on, people think that times she's on stage and performing are the best times of her life. But she was reflecting that is in those simple moments where she could be present, even though her health was failing, where she could be present with what was good in those moments, are the ones she enjoyed the most.
Yeah.
And yet everybody else out there makes a story about, oh, we need to be like her, as famous as she, with as much money as she is on the stage that she's at, in order for us to feel this and that. And it's right, helping everyone see that in this present moment, there's so much available right now that you can connect with and be grateful for, and experience the peace of that moment that is greater than anything else. Because very often what we seek outside has got a story attached to it, that if only I can achieve that, then this is the feeling. It's still that feeling we're after. It's just we've attached a story to say it's going to take this event to take place for me to experience that feeling. But that feeling, like the sun, is always there. We're just not connected to it. Does that make sense?
So where does the saying that the grass is greener, always greener on the other side, where does that come from in our predictions?
Yeah, but that is the whole point, though, isn't it? That it's the story that says, if only the grass will be greener. So what that does is it pushes into the future the idea that things could be better, and not having to engage with the moment that is right now. Because the moment that is right now, we've got a story attached to it that says it shouldn't be that way. But here's the thing, we're late. It's already that way. So how do you experience this present moment in the best possible way? That really is the invitation. I
think with a bit of gratitude.
Well, but that is where we're going to get to. That's part of the framework as well, is that part of being in the present moment is the gratitude, the sense of gratitude for what is good about right now. Yeah, it's and okay. So I'm going to stick this one in, and we'll quickly have a look at it, because I think what you'll do is maybe tie some of that up. So this one is called resistance. Resistance is futile. To resist is to engage. To engage is to exchange, fueling the energy by which it persists. It is here for its reason. Let it have its season. Glean all its lessons. Then let it be that it too shall pass. I'll read again. Resistance is futile. To resist is to engage. To engage is to exchange, fueling the energy by which it persists. It is here for its reason. Let it have its season. Glean all its lessons. Then let it be that it too shall pass.
What do you think, Frank?
I'm not sure about how I think about this one.
Well, that's all part of the process, right? If something's not sitting, then say it.
Yeah, I'm not sure at all.
It's deep.
Resistance is futile. I suppose resistance is futile depending on what it is you're resisting.
That's a good one. Yeah, I'm hearing that. Yeah, say more. Say more.
I don't know. It depends on what it is you're resisting.
Right.
I think it's always going to be what is it you're resisting is going to make difference as to whether you how much you resist.
Right. Okay. Yes.
Well, personally, I'm resisting using a stick because I'm too proud. I'm too proud, I guess.
Right. Okay.
So
Resistance.
there's a lot of resistance in lots of ways.
Right. No, I love what you're both sharing there about this idea that what is this that's been resisted will depend on, you know, how you see it and where you go with it. But let's keep playing with that. So the idea of there are things you want to resist because you believe you should resist it, right? And there are things that maybe you are resisting, but deep down you probably know that you shouldn't, or it's not helpful that you are. Yeah, that kind of is what I'm hearing so far.
I suppose for all of us, there must be things that we might think about why we would like to do, or situations we're in and we want to jump 2 feet in, but we don't. We resist it.
Yeah.
Though might not want to resist it, but we resist it because it's the better thing to do.
Right. I love that. So you flip that on its head now to say, actually, we could be resisting doing something that's good for us, as opposed to resisting something we don't want. Is actually maybe it's too much of a stretch for us, or it makes us too uncomfortable that we want to resist it. So here's what's interesting about the piece, and please do hear me. Every piece has so many different ways of flipping it, as we've just discovered. But the point here was this idea that if you have thought patterns or ways of doing and ways of being that's not serving you, and then you start resisting, you start fighting your mind, you start fighting your thoughts. That's the piece that this is about. And it's kind of inviting the idea that is resisting your thoughts the best way? Or is kind of just understanding why it's there, what it's trying to say, what it's based on, and then choosing, and Muriel, this will go back to your previous analogy, to ascend it instead. So rather than fight the thoughts, because as you fight the thoughts, you are still engaged in those thoughts. And here's what's interesting about your subconscious. Your subconscious does not know that the reason why you're focused on those thoughts is because you don't want them. All it knows is you are focused on those thoughts. And if you are focused on those thoughts, it's more likely to deliver them to you because it thinks that those are the thoughts that matter to you. It's so that's why actually it's never been helpful being focused on what you don't want. It's always been more helpful to focus on what you do want. Because whatever you focus on is what your subconscious helps you and supports you in bringing into manifestation. So it's this idea that actually, if you experience thoughts that you believe are not helpful for you, understand, learn from why it's there, what's the belief about yourself and things that means that that's there for you, learn from that, and then choose to ascend those instead, which is the ascend part of which is to say the sun is always there for me. If I look at the best version of myself, or what we might say in Christian parlance, the spiritual nature that I have, and were to connect with that, what would that look like? And what would I be thinking then? What would I be drawn towards then in that regard? Anything else? I'm aware that we're kind of slightly over time at this point.
I like the bit to engage is to exchange.
Yeah. So by resisting a thought you don't want, you're using your energy to really perpetuate it to continue to be in your world. And like I say, that's actually counterproductive because actually you think you're fighting it, but it's actually gaining more hold because you're focused on it as what you don't want, rather than focusing on what you want instead. It's usurping your energy in the fighting because it already is, the thought is there. The question is, what am I learning from the fact that it's there? What does it tell me about myself and my current view of things that this is there? And then how do I drop out of it? How do I just connect back to the sun that's always shining, if you like, for our original metaphor? How do I climb to the balcony, as Maria will say?
Any day we want to be on the balcony, not in the basement.
Yeah, but that's the point. It's the point. The invitation here is to recognize that you are somehow managed to end up in the basement. If I start spending 20 minutes there arguing I shouldn't be in the basement, why am I in the basement? What is it? Or do I just kind of go, oh, you know what? I'll just step up to the balcony. That is the invitation, really. Okay, anything else about that? We'll end on that, I believe.
That's it.
It's been very helpful. Thank you.
Oh, very, very. Thank you very much.
So Claudette, for you, what would be the biggest thing you're taking away from this then?
What, today?
Yeah.
I think to continue to embrace uncertainty.
Yeah.
Continue to look for opportunities within the unknown. Continue to spend time with myself and let that peace move through me in whatever activity I am led to be doing. And then I really like this bit with resistance, because I got some things I'm resisting to do, or resisting to engage in, and I'm struggling with it. But now you've given me this piece here today. I understand why I still got the thoughts that I'm resisting keep coming, because I'm still giving it energy. And I thought by resisting it, I wasn't giving it any energy, but I was wondering why it was still there. Now I know why it's still there.
Right. Okay. Well, that is beautiful. Muriel, what about you?
One second.
Well, I've got 3 words: simple, joyful, and gentle. That's what I'm going to be with people today.
Beautiful.
Simple, joyful, and gentle.
Well,
I don't know. Life's moving on, Frank, but I'm so sorry I was late, but
that's okay.
there were a few things, but
yeah.
It was lovely to be with you both, and I've learned a lot, as I always do, so thank you.
Thank you both for making it such a beautiful session.
Yeah, thank you so much, Fran.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
I don't think you realize the power. You don't realize the power of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's very encouraging. Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a beautiful, beautiful day, both.